Welcome back. On this episode, I'd like to talk about how to draw closer to God. This actually was the number one question asked by our junior high campers, but I've seen this question and heard this question from not just youth, but people of all ages. And the interesting thing is the answer, at least to me, is not one that people actually enjoy. And that basically is studying, praying, and fasting. I know that actually doesn't sound exciting. Most people don't really like that answer, and I think some of that is because it's too simple. Sometimes we love a mystery, and this is really plain. And so we have this scripture in 1 Nephi chapter 5, verses 131 through 135. And in this verse, God talks about how he loves those who choose him. And he talks about how he brought Israel out of Egypt. And then in the wilderness, because of their rebellion, their hard-heartedness, and that they would just continually turn away from God, there would be trials and tribulations as a way to bring them back to him. And one of those trials was fiery serpents. And of course, God sent these fiery serpents, but he also prepared a way for them to be healed, which isn't too dissimilar from us and Jesus Christ. In fact, it is a perfect analogy of that, one that even Jesus uses in John chapter 3. But the way that he prepared was this brazen serpent that Moses made, and all the people had to do was to look at this brazen serpent, and they would be healed. I mean, they didn't even have to believe. They just had to believe enough, or I guess trust enough, that looking would actually do something. But it says in this verse that because of the simpleness of the way and the easiness of it, that people refused to look. And I think I can be like that sometimes too. I think of, just for example, being healthy. If you were seeking to become a healthier person, the number 3 things to do, or the top 3 things to do, is eating healthy, exercising, and sleep, in that order. We all know that. I mean, most people know that. But that's not really the answer sometimes that we want to hear. We want to see if there's some kind of gadget or supplement or something that we can do that can help us advance to get to the end goal quickly, as quick as possible. But sometimes it just doesn't work that way. Studying, praying, and fasting is the way to draw closer to God. It's essential in our walk with Jesus Christ, because through studying, we come to learn about who God is and what he has done throughout time. The scriptures are a record of God's testimony. It's God's search for us. That's what's found in the scriptures. And so many people, sometimes we read the scriptures to study the scriptures, but we need to study the scriptures so that we are learning about God. That next part is prayer, and it's by prayer that we're able to actually communicate, to have a conversation with the Lord. And it's really important to realize that communication is a two-way street. It's not just one person having a monologue. It's 2 people actually conversing back and forth. And prayer is meant to be the same. Not only are we to share our hearts and our desires, our concerns, our worries, our burdens, our everything with him, but he desires to share himself with us and to take time to actually listen. And the last one is fasting. And through fasting, we really come to know God and know his will. Now, you might think, fasting sounds really similar to studying. What's the difference? Well, I will put it this way as just an example. I could go to the library and read all sorts of books about George Washington, or I guess I don't even have to go to the library. I could look it up online, but I could study everything there is to know about him, and I could come to a greater understanding. But I don't really know George Washington. And the same thing is true with God. I could study, and that's really good, But if it's not coupled with fasting, then there's always going to be something lacking in my relationship. These three things are so important. And they're also one that we hear all the time. The most often scripture I hear quoted is from Alma chapter 12, verses 1 through 5. And if you are in the Restoration Church, you've probably heard this hundreds of times, if not more, that through prayer and study and fasting, we have power and authority, and we have the spirit of revelation and the spirit of prophecy, how we might understand light and truth, and we have a testimony of Jesus Christ. Okay, I get that. But how do I do it? And so what we would like to do is create a new series here, or a new playlist, where we discuss this, and we have different individuals talk about prayer and talk about study and talk about fasting. So I hope that you will check those out and stay tuned for future episodes.